The words spoken in the innocent, clear voice of an 11-year-old sliced through the opulent silence of the penthouse office. "Ma'am, that's my dad's signature." Nia stood in the middle of the vast room, her small frame dwarfed by the floor-to-ceiling windows that showcased the glittering city below. Her brown finger was pointed at the grand framed patent on the wall, the very document that had founded the billion-dollar Ward automotive empire. The company's CEO, Selena Ward, looked up from her desk, the pen in her hand hovering over a contract. Her brow furrowed, not with anger, but with profound confusion. Her gaze shifted from the little black girl to the janitor mopping the floor by the window. The girl's father, who had frozen in place. Darius Cole's dark knuckles were bone white on the handle of his mop. The rhythmic circular motions he had been making for the past hour had ceased entirely. He looked pale, terrified, like a ghost who had just seen his own grave. He wasn't looking at Selena. His eyes were locked on his daughter, a silent, desperate plea in them. "No, Nia. Please, no." Selena's gaze followed Nia's finger back to the patent. She knew it by heart. Patent US 7138 or 914B2, Dynamic Sensor Fusion for Predictive Collisions Avoidance. It was the bedrock of her company, the technology that had made Ward Automotive a titan of industry. And at the bottom, the signature of the inventor, a confident, elegant script she saw every day. She looked back at the janitor. A cold, impossible question began to form in her mind. "Honey, what did you say?" Selena asked, her voice softer than she intended, trying to unravel the bizarre interruption. Nia, unafraid, took a step closer to the wall. "That signature, it's my dad's. He used to sign my birthday cards the same way with that little loop on the C in Cole." The world tilted. Darius felt the air suck out of his lungs. For 5 years, he had lived in the shadows, a ghost haunting the halls of a company built on his own genius. He'd taken this job, this humiliating, backbreaking work, for one reason. The pay was steady, enough to keep a roof over Nia's head and afford the tuition for the one good school in their district. He had built a fortress of invisibility around himself, and his daughter, in one innocent, observant sentence, had just leveled it. "Mr. Cole?" Selena said, her voice now sharp, professional. The CEO was back in control. "Is this some kind of joke?" Darius finally tore his eyes away from Nia and looked at the most powerful black woman in the city. He saw not malice, but a sharp, analytical intelligence trying to compute an error in the system. "No, ma'am, of course not," he stammered. "Nia, apologize to Miss Ward. We're disturbing her." He tugged at his daughter's sleeve, trying to pull her away, to retreat back into the shadows, but Nia stood her ground. "But it is, Dad. Look." Selena stood up. She was a tall, commanding woman, and her tailored suit seemed to radiate authority. She walked over to the wall, her heels clicking softly on the polished marble floor. She peered at the signature, a name she had never met, the name of a brilliant engineer her father had bought this patent from years ago, right before he passed away. She had always been told the man was a recluse who wanted no part of the corporate world. Then she turned and walked back to her desk, her expression unreadable. She tapped a few keys on her computer, her eyes scanning the screen. Darius's heart hammered against his ribs. He knew what she was doing. She was pulling his employee file. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. The only sound was the quiet hum of the building's climate control. Darius could feel beads of sweat trickling down his back. This was it. This was how it ended. He'd be fired, blacklisted. Malcolm Graves would hear about this and he would come for them. He would finish what he started 5 years ago. Selena's printer whirred to life, spitting out a single sheet of paper. She picked it up and walked back towards Darius, her eyes holding his. She held the paper next to the framed patent. On it was a scanned copy of his employment contract. At the bottom was his signature, Darius Cole. The two signatures, one on a billion-dollar patent and one on a janitor's contract, were identical. The confident looping C, the sharp decisive cross of the T. They were undeniably, irrefutably the same. Selena lowered the paper, her face a mask of controlled shock. The story she had been told her entire life, the foundation of her father's legacy and her own career, was suddenly riddled with cracks. "My apologies, Nia," Selena said, her voice quiet but firm, addressing the girl directly. "You are quite right. They do look the same." She then turned her steely gaze back to Darius. "My office. Now, Nia, you can wait out here with my assistant." Darius's blood ran cold. This was worse than being fired. This was an interrogation. "Ma'am, it's a misunderstanding. A coincidence. I don't believe in coincidences of this magnitude, Mr. Cole," Selena said, her voice leaving no room for argument. "My office." He looked at his daughter, who seemed to sense the sudden gravity of the situation, her earlier confidence replaced by a flicker of worry. He gave her a weak, reassuring smile he didn't feel. "It's okay, sweetie. I'll just be a minute." As he followed Selena Ward into her sprawling, immaculate office, the heavy oak door closing behind them with a soft, final click, Darius felt like he was walking to his own execution. He had spent 5 years running from his past, and now it had finally cornered him on the 50th floor. He had no more room to run. The office was like a cathedral of corporate power. A single lamp on Selena's massive mahogany desk cast a warm, intimidating glow, leaving the corners of the room in shadow. The closed door shut out the rest of the world, creating a pocket of unnerving silence. "I'm going to ask you one more time, Mr. Cole," she began, her voice low and even, yet carrying an edge of tempered steel. "Explain it to me, and do not insult my intelligence by calling it a coincidence." Darius's mind raced, searching for an escape route, a plausible lie. But fear, cold and sharp, was a physical presence in the room. It wasn't just fear of losing his job. It was the deep, primal fear of Malcolm Graves. Malcolm had buried him once. He wouldn't hesitate to do it again, permanently. For Nia's sake, he had to keep the past buried. "Ma'am, with all due respect, my name is Darius Cole. The inventor's name on that patent is also Darius Cole. It's a rare name, I know, but it's not impossible." Selena cut him off with a sharp wave of her hand. "The name is not the problem. The signature is. Penmanship is like a fingerprint. The odds of 2 different people having that exact signature with that exact loop on the C your daughter pointed out are astronomical. So let's stop wasting time." She took a step toward him. "My father bought that patent 5 years ago. He told me the story. He bought it from a brilliant engineer who had decided to leave the field. A recluse who wanted to disappear. He paid the man's partner, a man named Malcolm Graves, who handled the entire transaction. My father never even met the inventor. He just signed the checks. Now, for the past 5 years, I have been running a company based on the work of a man I believed to be a ghost. And tonight, I find out that ghost is mopping my floors. So you will tell me what is going on. You will tell me why my company's founding patent has your signature on it. And you will tell me right now." The name Malcolm Graves hit Darius like a physical blow. Hearing it spoken aloud in this office by this woman shattered the last of his composure. The carefully constructed walls he had built around his past crumbled into dust. The memories, the pain he had suppressed for 5 years, came rushing back in a tidal wave of grief and rage. He sank into one of the leather chairs opposite her desk, his body suddenly too heavy to support itself. He buried his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking. The fight was gone. There was only exhaustion and the aching sorrow of what he had lost. He didn't just take the patent. Darius's voice was a ragged whisper muffled by his hands. He took everything. Selena remained silent, her expression shifting from impatience to a guarded, intense curiosity. She recognized the sound of genuine pain. This wasn't a trick. This was a confession. Darius looked up, his eyes red-rimmed and haunted. My wife. Her name was Keisha. She was an architect. Brilliant. She saw the world in lines and angles, beauty in everything. One night we were driving home. It was raining. The roads were slick. Someone ran a red light. The impact. It was on her side. He paused, swallowing hard against the lump in his throat. Selena remained motionless, listening. The police said it was just an accident. But the car, it was a top-of-the-line model. It was supposed to be the safest car on the market. But the safety systems failed. The side impact sensors, the airbag deployment, none of it worked the way it was supposed to. She died in my arms before the paramedics even arrived. The story poured out of him now, a torrent of grief held back for too long. I couldn't let it go. I was an engineer. I designed safety systems. I got the accident reports, the specs for the car. I found the flaw, a tiny miscalculation in the sensor fusion algorithm. In a crisis, the system got overwhelmed and shut down. It was a fatal mistake. So I quit my job. I poured all our savings, all of my time into fixing it. I wanted to build something that could never fail, something that could see an accident before it happened and protect the people inside. I called it the Angel Guard system. He looked toward the patent on the wall, a bitter irony twisting his features. Malcolm was my partner, my best friend. He handled the business side while I worked in the lab. We were going to change the world, save lives. But he got an offer, a massive one, from your father. Selena's face was pale. She was starting to understand. I told him it wasn't ready. Darius continued, his voice cracking with the memory of the betrayal. I needed another 6 months of testing. I wouldn't sell it. I wasn't doing it for the money. I was doing it for Keisha, for her memory. Malcolm didn't care. He saw dollar signs. We fought. The next day, I went to the lab, and the doors were locked. He had cleaned me out, my prototypes, my data, everything. He used a forged power of attorney to sell the patent to your father, filing it under my name to make the sale look legitimate. Then he accused me of trying to steal the technology for myself. He planted evidence, paid off witnesses. He called me unstable, grief-stricken, a corporate spy. He destroyed my reputation. No one would hire me. No one would even listen to me. I lost my career, my friends, my wife's legacy. He buried me. He finally looked at Selena, his eyes pleading for her to understand the depth of his despair. I took this job because I had nothing left, because I had a daughter to feed, and because every day I wanted to see the thing that destroyed my life. I wanted to look at it and remember why I had to keep fighting, for Nia. Selena sank into her own chair behind the desk, her composure finally breaking. The story was monstrous. It was also horribly plausible. It explained everything. The reclusive inventor, Malcolm Graves's convenient role as the middleman, the sheer tragic irony of it all. Her company wasn't just built on a patent. It was built on a man's soul. Why didn't you go to the police? To the press? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. I did, Darius said, a hollow laugh escaping his lips. It was my word against his. The word of a disgraced, unstable black engineer against a charismatic, wealthy black businessman. I had no proof. He had destroyed it all. They laughed me out of the room. Selena stared at him, her mind connecting a dozen desperate points of information she had never understood. The quiet janitor who always seemed so sad. His fierce, protective love for his daughter. And the signature on the wall, a silent testament to a crime that had gone unpunished for 5 years. She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city her company had helped build. A city kept safe by a technology born from one man's heartbreak, a technology he had never been credited for. Don't come in for your shift tomorrow, Mr. Cole, she said, her back still to him. Darius's heart sank. It was happening. Please, Miss Ward, I need this job for my daughter. She turned around, and for the first time, he didn't see a CEO. He saw a woman whose world had just been turned upside down. Her eyes were filled with a cold, simmering fury he realized was not directed at him. You don't work for me as a janitor anymore, Darius, she said, using his first name for the first time. Tomorrow, you and I are going to have a talk. Not here. Somewhere private. I have a feeling we have a monster to find. The next afternoon, Darius's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. St. Catherine's Park, gazebo by the pond. 3 Garhal p.m. Come alone. When he arrived, Selena Ward was already there, sitting on a bench inside the old wooden gazebo. She was dressed not in a power suit, but in simple jeans and a dark coat, her natural hair pulled back. She looked less like a CEO and more like an ordinary person, but her eyes still held that same fierce intelligence. Thank you for coming, she said as he sat on the opposite bench. You said you wanted to talk, Darius replied, his voice tense. I do, she said, her gaze direct. Last night, I had my head of security, a man I trust with my life, run a deep background check on Malcolm Graves. What I found makes your story even more believable. He has a history of hostile takeovers, of pushing partners out of startups. He's been sued 6 times, but he always settles out of court, burying the accusations under non-disclosure agreements. He's slick and he's careful. She leaned forward, her voice dropping. Darius, I believe you. Every word. What he did to you, to your wife's memory. It's unforgivable. And he did it using my family's money. That makes this my fight too. A wave of relief so profound, it almost buckled him, washed over Darius. He wasn't crazy. He wasn't alone. What can we do? He destroyed all the evidence. He thinks he did. Selena corrected him. Men like Graves, men driven by pure ego, they always make mistakes. They keep trophies. They get sloppy. We just need to find the one loose thread he missed. Darius racked his brain, sifting through the wreckage of his past. The lab, he said slowly, a memory stirring. It was an old warehouse. After Malcolm locked me out, he kept it for another month before the demolition. He said he was disposing of hazardous materials. He was destroying the evidence. And you think he might have missed something? Selena pressed. I don't know. But there was a man, the foreman of the demolition crew. His name was Elias Jordan. A decent man. I tried to talk to him back then, to get him to let me inside to salvage some personal effects. He refused. Said his orders from Graves were absolute, level the building and everything in it. But he looked guilty. He knew something wasn't right. Selena's eyes lit up with strategic fire. A witness. Someone who saw what Graves was so desperate to hide. Do you know where to find him? I think so, Darius said, the gears in his mind turning for the first time in 5 years, not with grief, but with purpose. He had a daughter who was sick. I remember talking to him about it. He said he was working demolition to pay her medical bills. Maybe I can find him through the hospital records. Good, Selena said, a grim smile touching her lips. That's our first step. Find Jordan. She stood up, pulling her collar against the autumn chill. Darius, you need to understand something. This is dangerous. Graves is not just a corporate thief. He's ruthless. If he finds out we're digging, he will come after us. He'll come after you. And he'll come after Nia. The mention of his daughter sent a chill down Darius's spine that had nothing to do with the weather. He looked Selena in the eye, his own resolve hardening into steel. He already took everything from me once, Darius said, his voice low and steady. I won't let him do it again. I'll do whatever it takes. The next morning, Darius drove to the address he'd found. It was a small, modest house with a neatly kept lawn. A tired-looking black man in his late 50s was on the porch fixing a squeaky hinge on the screen door. Elias Jordan? Darius asked, his voice steady despite the tremor of adrenaline inside him. The man looked up, his eyes widening in recognition and then narrowing in fear. I don't know you, he said, his voice rough. He immediately turned back to the hinge. Yes, you do, Darius said, stepping onto the porch. 5 years ago, the warehouse demolition. You were the foreman. We spoke. Jordan dropped his screwdriver. It clattered on the wooden planks. You need to leave, he said, his voice a low growl. Now, I have nothing to say to you. I'm not here to cause trouble, Elias, Darius said, his voice softening. I remember you told me about your daughter, Isabella. How is she? The mention of his daughter made Jordan flinch. She's fine. She's in remission. No thanks to men like your old partner. He finally turned to face Darius, his face a mixture of fear and long-held resentment. That man Graves, he paid me a lot of money to keep my mouth shut. Paid for my daughter's treatment. He told me if I ever spoke a word about what I saw in that warehouse, the money would stop and my daughter would be out of the program. He said worse things would happen. Do you understand? I have a family to protect. He threatened my daughter yesterday, Darius said, his voice flat and cold. That's why I'm here. He's not going to stop. Not unless we stop him. I just need you to tell me what you saw, Elias. I need proof. Jordan looked past Darius, his eyes scanning the quiet suburban street as if expecting Malcolm's thugs to appear at any moment. He let out a long, shuddering breath, the breath of a man who had been holding it for 5 years. He was a maniac, Jordan whispered, his voice trembling. It wasn't a demolition. It was an extermination. He had his own crew in there for 2 days before we even started. They were shredding documents, smashing hard drives with sledgehammers, taking blowtorches to metal prototypes. He watched over them like a hawk. He wanted every last trace of your work turned to dust and ash. Darius's heart sank. It was exactly as he'd feared. So there's nothing left? I didn't say that, Jordan said, his eyes darting back to Darius. He seemed to make a decision. That man is a monster. He used my daughter's life to buy my silence. I'm not a brave man, Cole. But I'm not a coward either. He walked to the corner of the porch and lifted a loose floorboard. From the dark space beneath, he pulled out a dusty, oilskin-wrapped bundle. He carefully unwrapped it on the porch railing. On the last day, after his crew was gone, I was doing a final sweep, Jordan said, his voice barely audible. Something had fallen behind a heavy furnace. They missed it. He finished unwrapping the bundle. Inside was a small metal-cased external hard drive. It was mangled, dented, and blackened with soot, with a deep gash across its surface. It looked like a piece of junk. His goons tried to destroy it, but this thing is military grade, Jordan said, tapping the ruined casing. They probably thought they'd done enough. I found it. I don't know if anything on it survived, but I kept it, as insurance. Or maybe because my conscience wouldn't let me throw it away. He pushed the ruined hard drive across the railing toward Darius. Here, take it. And for God's sake, be careful. If Graves finds out I talked to you, he'll burn us all. Darius drove away with the damaged hard drive resting on the passenger seat like a time bomb. The first thing he did was call Selena. I have something, he said, his voice low and urgent the moment she picked up. I found Jordan. He gave me a hard drive. Graves's crew tried to destroy it, but Jordan saved it. It's in bad shape, Selena, really bad. Don't go home. Don't go anywhere public, Selena said immediately. There's a man I use for sensitive data recovery. His name is Tyrell Knox. He's the best there is, a digital ghost. He works out of an old electronics repair shop in the industrial district. I'm sending you the address now. The address led him to a grimy, forgotten corner of the city. Knox's Vintage Electronics. The faded sign read. The man behind the counter was young, no older than 30, with intricate locks and a series of intricate tattoos running up his neck. But his eyes were ancient and sharp. You must be the friend of the collector, Tyrell said, his voice a low hum. It was clearly a code. She sent me, Darius confirmed, placing the mangled hard drive on the counter. Tyrell picked it up, examining the damage with the discerning eye of a surgeon. Someone really wanted this to stay dead. Just then, Selena Ward walked in. She was dressed down once more, but her presence seemed to command the small shop. Can you save it? She asked, cutting straight to the point. Tyrell carried the drive to a workbench that looked more like a high-tech surgical theater. He plugged cables into the damaged ports, his eyes fixed on monitors showing complex diagnostics. The casing is military grade, but the impact did serious damage. The platters might be intact. It's going to be slow. Very slow. How slow? Darius pressed. If the data is still there, and that's a big if, I might be able to start pulling coherent files in 24 to 48 hours. The next day was the longest of Darius's life. He kept Nia home from school, telling her the school had a plumbing issue. They spent the day at the Science Museum, but Darius couldn't focus. He watched every person who lingered near them, every car that drove by too slowly. The call from the school came at 3:15 p.m., just as he was preparing to leave to pick her up. It was her teacher, Mrs. Gable, and her voice was tight with alarm. Mr. Cole, something just happened here. A man just tried to pick Nia up. He came to the front office, said you were stuck in a meeting and had sent him. He knew her name, your name. He was very convincing, but Nia, she did exactly what she was supposed to do. She remembered your rule. She refused to go with him and ran straight to me. Darius was out the door before Mrs. Gable finished speaking, blind terror propelling him forward. He found Nia in her classroom, her face pale but her expression defiant. He swept her up in his arms. You did so good, sweetie. He whispered into her hair. You were so smart, so brave. It was in that moment of despair that his phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? I have it. The voice was low and electric with excitement. It was Tyrell. I found a video file. What's on it? Can't tell yet. It's corrupted, but I can see two figures arguing in what looks like a lab. The audio is what I'm trying to restore now. That evening, in Selena's safe house apartment, they watched the recovered video. The grainy black and white footage showed a younger Darius and Malcolm Graves in heated argument. "I can't sell it, Malcolm. It's not ready. It's for Keisha." Malcolm's face was a mask of greed. "Keisha's dead. This isn't a memorial. It's a gold mine. It's my work, my name." "Your name?" Malcolm laughed cruelly. "Your name is about to be mud. I've already set the stage. I have emails showing your erratic behavior. I have a witness who will testify you tried to sell our research to a competitor. By the time I'm done, everyone in this industry will think you're an unstable, grieving fool who tried to commit corporate espionage. I will destroy you, Darius. I will ruin you so completely that no one will ever listen to a word you say again. This invention, it's mine now." The video ended with Malcolm shoving Darius against a workbench. Silence filled the room. Selena was staring at the screen, tears streaming down her face. Not tears of pity, but tears of rage. "He didn't just bury your career that day," she said, her voice shaking. "He buried a confession." She closed the laptop with a sharp snap. "Now we're going to dig it up and bury him with it." 2 nights later was the Automotive Innovation Gala. Malcolm Graves was scheduled to receive the Visionary of the Year award. In a van 3 blocks away, Darius sat beside Tyrell, watching monitors showing the ballroom feeds. Their inside man, Marcus Reed, a young AV tech who'd once interned at Ward Automotive, was ready. Inside the ballroom, Selena Ward sat at a front table, projecting calm while her nerves stretched taut. She watched Malcolm work the room, his charisma almost hypnotic. Finally, the moment arrived. Malcolm took the stage, accepting his Crystal Award. "True innovation isn't just about technology," he said, his voice swelling with false emotion. "It's about heart. It's about protecting our loved ones. It's in that spirit that I am proud to announce the formation of the Graves Foundation for Traffic Safety." The screen behind him lit up with the foundation's logo. "To launch the foundation, I am making an inaugural donation of $10 million to our city's trauma centers." In the van, Darius pressed the button on his headset. "Now." Marcus's fingers danced. The foundation's logo flickered, replaced by static, then the grainy lab footage. "Keisha's dead. This isn't a memorial, it's a gold mine." A collective gasp went through the room. On stage, Malcolm's smile froze, then melted into shock. "I will destroy you, Darius. This invention, it's mine now." The room was utterly silent, except for Malcolm's recorded voice confessing his crimes. Journalists scrambled, phones recording. The live stream broadcast everything to the world. From her table, Selena Ward began to applaud, slowly, deliberately. Then the room exploded into chaos. Reporters surged toward the stage. Security guards moved in, followed by federal agents. Selena had made one last call before the video aired. In the van, Darius watched as agents flanked a stunned Malcolm Graves. He didn't feel triumph or joy, just peace. The weight he'd carried for 5 years was finally gone. 1 year later, Darius stood in the center of the Cole Ward Advanced Safety Division, a sprawling laboratory that felt more like an inventor's paradise. He was no longer a ghost. He moved through the space with calm confidence, the man he was always meant to be. Selena walked in with coffee. They'd become friends through their ordeal, bound by trust and mutual respect. The first production models with the fully integrated Gen 2 Angel Guard system roll off the line next week, she said. Keisha's legacy. It's finally real. That weekend, Darius, Nia, and Selena stood in a cemetery, dedicating a granite bench at Keisha's headstone. Nia placed wildflowers at the base. "I told my art teacher about Mom," she said softly. "I'm painting a picture of her from that photo on your desk, the one where she's laughing." As the sun set, Darius looked from Keisha's name, etched in stone, to his daughter's bright face. He had walked through the darkest valley and emerged into light. His wife's legacy lived on in every car that left the factory, in every family that made it home safe. The ghost had spoken, and the whole world had heard him.